there's a website, and I think it's an app called Overtime. Are you guys, Gavin, are you familiar with Overtime? Before you read the story, were you familiar with Overtime?
I knew them because I follow them on Instagram.
Right. They're like an IG story. Okay, so they want to start a league called Overtime Elite. Formed under the auspices, the sports media company Overtime would compete directly with the NCAA for the nation's top high school boys by employing about 30 of them who would circumvent the behemoth of college sports. Overtime would offer each athlete, some young as 16, a minimum of $100,000 annually, as well as signing bonus and a small number of shares in Overtime's larger business. The company will also provide health and disability insurance, has set aside $100,000 in college scholarship money for each player in case any decide not to pursue basketball professionally. So what is this about? What it's being positioned as is, hey, man, you don't got to go to college. You can go play pro and play against prep schools, right? So, here's the lie that you've been told for a long time is that players haven't had the option to go professionally. Even before the G League Select Team, which is a select number of guys that get paid handsomely to train and play against, well, pros. Before that, you could always go to the G League for a year. Just the salary wasn't what people thought it should be. You could always go overseas. The fact is that most kids don't have overseas options because overseas teams, they're not good enough for it. They're too young. They're not able to compete. They actually need to go to, wait for it, college. Look, the devil is in the details in that, how many of these leagues have come along and gone? They don't make money. And what's left in their wake, you'll have a couple of kids benefit off it financially. But who's going to coach it? Were they going to play against prep schools? So is that going to, why would you do that as opposed to go to college? And I've had people reach out like, why are you so against kids getting money from their name and likeness? Not against it. But they actually do get money from their name and likeness playing in college basketball. Like, no, they don't. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. What they do is they surrender up until this point, up until they find out how they're going to do this in college athletics, and it really becomes pay for play. But you surrender everything for a college scholarship, which is exactly like the rest of the student body. Once you have a job that's better than than going to college, you leave college. Or you don't. You don't have to. You don't have to go to college. Nobody's forced you to do so. But if you take this deal, you'll not only never play college basketball, you likely never go to college. You're like, wait, what? Yeah. Because, Gavin, how old are you?
32.
When did you go to college?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Cal State Fullerton.
Okay, Cal State Fullerton. Yeah. Now, when I was a kid, I'm in my 40s. When I was a kid, Cal State Fullerton, basically if you graduated from high school in the state of California and you had like a 2.5 or above, you could get in. Okay, Cal State, like San Diego State used to be, you need a pulse to get in there. It was a big party school. Now, like you need good grades. You know why? Because there's tons of kids that want to go to college. It's kind of hard. It's kind of competitive. Could you go to a Cal State Fullerton? Maybe. But remember, these kids are likely to leave high school. Oh, yeah. A kid that wants so badly to become a professional basketball player will leave high school at the age of 16 to go to the Overtime League, is very likely to keep up their grades and get a good enough, whether it's an SAT or whatever they deem. At this point, we're not using the SAT, but it's because of the pandemic. We don't know if they'll come back. Do you really think that they'll qualify for or be able to get into any sort of reputable school? Like, people have no possible clue, because we have idiots in my line of work that do not cast the right shadow. Everything is bad. It's bad. They're making money. It's bad. They're making money off students. It's bad. Oh, hey, Mr. Ryder, who went to Syracuse, and your parents paid $60,000 a year. You paid to go to school, right? Yeah. You paid to go to school. Hey, guess what? You don't pay, and you get in. and you get everything taken care of, and you get tutors, and you get your sport, and you get to train, and you make a name for yourself. Like, you missed all that, didn't you? Well, they're making billions. They're not making billions. That's like a 20-year contract spread out over 14 teams. Yes, it becomes $1 billion. Break it down a little bit more. No one player has any sort of individual value that's so high. And the kids that do, they leave and they go pro. It's a dumb argument. It's a dumb idea for a league. And the genius to it is, I don't know if it ever gets off the ground. It feels like an idea, but it feels one that gets people talking about, well, the overtime. What's the overtime? Oh, I should download the overtime. I should look at the website. That's the overtime. That's the brilliance to it. Here we are, and I'm just as big an idiot as anybody else. I'm going to give the overtime their due. Like, let's talk about a made-up sports network that does highlights. I know my son looks at it. He looks at the IG. But this would be a disaster. What are you going to pay him in? Well, we're going to give him some shares of our. We're going to give him some shares of Overtime's bigger business. And how many shares? I don't know, 5. It's going to grow, and we give him 0.25% or whatever. Like, okay. And look, getting equity in somebody who's investing in you is really smart. Really smart. It's a long-term play. Do you know what's the smartest long-term play for an athlete? Going to college. Yeah, that's the smartest long-term play. Let me tell you the other benefits you have. Okay. Ralph Irvin, pick a college basketball program.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay. Let's say you go to Oklahoma, and let's say you're from Southern California. Okay, I went to Oklahoma State. I know that. You go to Oklahoma. Okay, first of all, you go to places, you see a part of the country you've never seen. You make friends you've never made before. Now you have a name if you play in Dallas, in Oklahoma City, in Tulsa, in most of the Midwest, and still kind of back home because of where you kind of came from, whatever. But you have a name and connections with everybody in that school. If you go to school at Oklahoma and you stop playing basketball and you want to get a job, you apply for one in Dallas, and an OU alum or a Texas alum even, you got a pretty good shot. And then you go like, hey, I play basketball there. You got a good shot of getting the job. If you want to stay in the sport, well, Lon Kruger has coached everywhere, knows everybody, picks up the phone and says, hey, my guy wants to be a head high school coach. You can do that. Oh, you want to be an athletic director? Guess what? Joe Castiglione is your athletic director. You got to know him. He got to know you, the type of person you are. I'd really like to be an athletic director in 20 years. Okay. I have connections at Mizzou, where I came from, and all these other places. That's how that works. It's networking. It gives you a home. It gives you a sports family. None of this happens when you're in some made-up AAU team that dudes are getting paid. This is dumb. So it's not a new idea. There's brilliance to it, and it brings attention to the parent company that many adults hadn't heard of, even though the kids know it to know it. My guess would be it never actually takes shape. And those who do take the check lose their eligibility and end up somewhat bitter in the end because you're not coached by anything special. You're playing against, prep school teams. You lose your college eligibility. You probably lose your ability to get into a college. And if you're an NBA player, they're going to advise you to go to the G League select team or go to college. Look, there's like, what was that? What was that app that was going to do like condensed shows? That was like, was it Quibi? Quib?
Yes.
How was it? Quibi, right?
Quibi, yeah.
Quibi with a V?
Quibi, Quibi.
Right. Ramos, did you know about this Quibi thing?
I did, yes.
I did too. Okay, and I know it because I knew somebody who left and took a job at Quibi. And it launched in August of 2018. And you want to talk about brilliant people who started it? Jeffrey Katzenberger started it. You're like, what? Yeah, Jeffrey Katzenberger. He did The Little Mermaid, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda. Like, this dude is pretty brilliant, right? And Meg Whitman was their CEO. She was a board member of Procter & Gamble and Dropbox, right? And she had previously been president and CEO of Hewlett Packard, right? So and she took over as CEO in August of 2020. It launched in April 2020. The idea was it was short-form streaming platform, generated content for viewing on mobile devices. So instead of watching, half hour of the news, it was like 3 minutes, and you're like, wow, that's great. I got ADD. I got to watch it. Do you know how long it lasted? It started in April of 2020 and shut down in December of 2020. Oops.
What happened in April 2020?
There was the pandemic. Yes, that was
not a lot of people commuting. Yeah.
No, but you were still on your mobile devices, and there was still news. It just kind of got lost. It was one of those, pretty good idea, and look, their first day they launched, they had 300,000 downloads. They had as many as 1.7 million downloads in the Google Play Store. It was the 11th most downloaded app in April. But then all of a sudden people were like, okay, I don't get it. I don't, right? Like you end up watching that during those times, we still got the news. People watch the news more than ever. They just went back to your traditional news sources, CNN and Fox News and ABC and NBC and all those things, right? That's the same thing with sports. It's a good idea. Like, oh, yeah, kind of a cool idea. End of the day, are you going to watch that? Or are you going to watch college basketball, Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, Carolina? Like, who do you think you're going to watch? You're going to watch March Madness because the bracket and the tournament. You're going to watch the NBA. People don't even watch the G League. Like, look, the truth is the G League's players, the worst team in the G League would win the national championship going away. 30 points. Not competitive. They're better players in college. Do you know why they won't watch it? Because it's the G League. Like teams like the Austin Toreros. Sorry, I don't have an Austin Toreros shirt. I didn't go to play for the Austin Toreros when I was coming out of school.